Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. I'm Councillor Barry Pierpoint. I'm the chairman of the committee, and to my right is Vice Chairman Councillor Anton Dunning. Before we start, may I remind everyone in attendance this evening that the meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. We haven't got any members of the public, have we, tonight? Before we move into the preliminary items of this evening's agenda, I need to run through a few housekeeping details. Restroom facilities are available for ladies on this floor and halfway down the main stairwell for gentlemen. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, officers will escort everyone out of the building to the nearest fire safety point in the car park. Will all persons addressing this meeting please do so through the microphone system at all times. This meeting is being recorded. And once finished speaking, can you make sure you switch your microphone off? Please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who is deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain. If the behaviour persists, they will be asked to leave the meeting. Before we move on to the main items of the agenda, I'd like to welcome two of our new independent members, Adam Cartwright and Gideon Hall. I'm going to ask them to speak for just a minute each, tell us a bit about who they are, their background, and then after they finish speaking, I want you all to introduce yourself so they can see who you are as well. Right, I'll start with you then, Gideon. Over to you.
Hello, my name's Gideon Hall. I live in Butterwick with my wife Karen. I've got a label printing company in the village, which was established by my father back in 1973. That got hit reasonably hard by COVID, but we're recovering from that. And as a result of that, I took myself out of the business, and now we're starting a home care business in Freeston. So we've got different challenges with that. I've lived in Butterwick all my life, lived in the same house for the majority of my life, having bought it from my parents, and I'm interested to see how I can help or be part of this committee.
Thank you, Gideon. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Barry. Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Cartwright. I live in Horncastle with my wife, Michelle. I moved here just over a year ago. And before that, I spent something like 38 years in revenue and customs in various posts in London. But I am actually from Boston. I left in 1982, and it's been a real delight to move back to the area after so long away. I'm supposedly retired, but I do this as well as a whole number of other things, including editing a couple of magazines. And are we okay there? And doing a bit of you make me very nervous, yeah. Yeah. But I'm not available for offering any tax advice, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
I'll start with Anton on this side, Councillor Downing. You just introduce yourself, your names, just all on the table so these gentlemen can see who you are.
Well, I am Anton Danny. I've been in this council since 2015.
Thank you.
Good evening. We've met John Medler, Assistant Director for Governance and the Monitoring Officer, Boston Borough Council.
Put your microphone on, Richard, please.
Richard Austin, Councillor for Warburton.
Hello, I'm James Cantwell, the councillor for the 5 villages.
Yeah, hi there. My name is Mike Gilbert. This is my second time on Boston Borough Council. I first got elected in 2007. I did 8 years, and then I had an 8-year break. I'm back again. I'm an independent member of the opposition group.
I'm Paul Gleeson. I'm a councillor for Skirboat Ward, and half a century ago I worked for the Revenue.
Are you not working?
I'm Richard Steele. I'm the Group Information Manager and Data Protection Officer of Boston Borough Council.
My name's Sean Housen. I'm the Interim Treasury and Investments Manager employed by Public Sector Partnership Services which provides the finance function for East Lindsey, Boston and South Hond councils.
David Scoot, one of 3 councillors for Fishtoft Ward.
Councillor Mountain, I represent Wilton Ward.
I'm Councillor David Middleton. I'm the Frampton and Curtin ward.
Beatrice, Democratic Services Officer.
Good, we'll move on. So welcome you to the 2 new members of the committee. Pleased that you joined us, and we're looking forward to your input as we go along from meeting to meeting. Now we move to part 1 of these preliminaries. Are there any apologies for absence at all?
Yes, Chairman. We receive apologies from Councillor Sabikian.
Does any member wish to declare any interest in respect of any items on the agenda? No? Do I have permission to sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of October?
Agreed.
Lovely, thank you. I'll just sign them. There you are. Thank you very much. Can I ask, are there any outstanding actions from the last meeting?
I have an update with regards to the first action, minute 20, page 3, for external audit to review the BMM purchase and report back to the committee. External audit have advised that the purchase was completed in 24-25 and as such will be picked up as part of the 24-25 audits. All other actions listed within the document are complete. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got no public at the moment, so there's obviously no questions from the members of the public at all. So, sorry. Yes. Just put your microphone on again, please.
Sorry, yeah. So, agenda item D, minute 22 is shown in progress. That is now complete, I understand. Or in other words, I've had it anyway.
Yeah, I can confirm that it is complete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gleeson, for that prompt. Right, so that concludes the preliminaries. We'll now move on to part 2 of the agenda items. Right. Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2024. This is on page 11, and I'm going to ask Sean to present his report to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. You have before you on page 11 the overarching report, which is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report for 2024-25. And the purpose of the report is to provide members with an update on the Treasury Management performance and activities to ensure best practice is maintained. I don't propose to go through the overarching report. I will go through the main appendix, which starts at page 18. Paragraph 2 by way of introduction. This report has been written in accordance with the requirements of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy's Code of Practice on Treasury Management, which was revised in 2021. The reporting requirements in that code require the Council to produce a Treasury Management Policy Statement and a Treasury Management Strategy Statement in advance of the financial year, and this was produced and submitted to Council as part of the budget setting report. Delegation by the Council of responsibilities for implementing and monitoring Treasury Management policies and practices has been done, and the delegated body is the Audit and Governance Committee, and that is the purpose of this report today. Paragraph 3 on page 19 provides an economic and interest rate forecast update, which has been provided by a link group or the Council's external Treasury advisors. I don't propose to go through that, it's quite detailed, but the main points are that gross domestic product growth stagnated in July. There's been a further easing in wage growth and consumer price index inflation hitting its target in June before edging above it back to 2.2%. Again, the Bank of England initiated its easing of interest rates by reducing interest rates from 5.2% 5.25% to 5% in its meeting in August. And you will be aware that last week they reduced those interest rates down to 4.75%, but that will be reported in Q3. Paragraph 3.2 on page 23 provides the latest interest rate forecast at the time the report was produced, which was the forecast at the 28th of May 24 by our external Treasury advisors. That forecast showed that they anticipated that the base rate would be 4.5% by December 24 and 4% by March 25. We have, since this report was produced, we have had a revised update on the 11th of November to this forecast, which has now increased the forecast rate for December 24 to 4.75%, and the forecast for March 25 has been increased to 4.5%. So their expectation is that the interest rate reductions will take longer to feed through into the market. Paragraph 4 provides a treasury management strategy and annual investment strategy update, which was approved by Council as part of the budget setting report on the 4th of March 2024, and there are no policy changes to this strategy statement proposed. The table at the bottom of page 23 provides your authorised and operational borrowing limits, which you will see there are set at £18 million and £15 million. And the capital financing requirement, which is your underlying need to borrow for historic capital expenditure purposes. The original budget was 18,671,000, and the latest approved figure is 18,707,000, so a slight increase. Paragraph 5 refers to the Council's capital position, and the table halfway down page 24 shows you the latest position in relation to capital expenditure. So you have a 2024-25 approved budget of just under £36 million. That latest revised budget is just under £35 million. Actual expenditure to the 31st of August, can I stress there that that is the 31st of August and not the 30th of September, because the Q2 information was produced at the end of August. But when this report goes to Council, we will update this column to show the capital position at the 30th of September so that it's a comparable position. So the capital expenditure was just over £4 million, and the estimated outturn for capital expenditure based on the project manager's current forecast for their projects shows that the capital expenditure at the end of the financial year is just likely to be just over £20 million. Tables on page 25 show that capital expenditure and how it is being financed. So you'll see there in relation to the estimated outturn column, you've got capital expenditure forecast of just over £20 million, and the majority of that capital expenditure will be financed, but there is a small element that is going to be financed from borrowing, which is likely to be internal borrowing and will be reduced by minimum revenue provision charges each year. And the table at the bottom of page 25 reiterates that revised capital financing requirement referred to as CFR. So you see there that 18548. That is a movement in the financial year of CFR of 143. And you'll also see there the confirming the borrowing limits of £10 million for borrowing and £5 million for other long-term liabilities. But that is those limits have not changed. There is a key control in relation to borrowing activity where those limits, the borrowing limits you can't borrow more than your capital financing requirement. And you'll see there that the council currently has external borrowing of £1 million and the capital financing requirement of 18,548,000 estimated outturn. So well below the capital financing requirement and well within the limit. Paragraph 6 just provides more information in relation to actual borrowing. The table 5.4 above showed you the borrowing limits and the fact that the council had utilised £17.418 million of cash funds to internally borrow rather than incur external borrowing costs by borrowing from the market. Council has a £1 million lender option borrowing option LOBO loan with State Street nominees at a rate of 11.125%, which is due to mature in 2051. So the table at the top of page 27 provides you with a forecast in relation to your borrowing costs for the year. And you'll see there that the budget at period 6 was £55,777, and that was the actual. And the annual budget is £111,250, and the forecast outturn is that same figure in view of the fact that the borrowing cost is fixed. Page 28, the chart at the top of page 28 shows you a graph in relation to PWLB borrowing rates up to the 30th of September. And you'll see there's been reasonable fluctuations there, up and down, nothing drastically volatile, but you'll see towards the end of the September period where the interest rates started to increase slightly. Paragraph 8 refers to the Council's compliance with its Treasury and Prudential limits. During the half year ended 30th September, the Council has operated within the Treasury and Prudential limits set in the Council's Treasury Management Strategy Statement. Paragraph 9 refers to the Council's annual investment strategy, which was approved by Council on the 4th of March, and that set the Council's priorities as the security of capital, liquidity, and then yield in that order. And then the Council will aim to achieve optimum return on its investments commensurate with the proper levels of security and liquidity. Investment balances, bottom of page 29, you'll see the average level of funds invested during the first half of the financial year was £48 million, and that is the same as the position as at Q1. Page 30, the chart on page 30 shows the investment rates in the market, and you'll see there in view of the fact that the expectation for interest rate base rates are that there's going to be a reduction. The investment rates in the market, you will see there, have started to fall and are likely to continue to fall as those base rate reductions feed through into the market. Page 31 provides you with a table of all the Council's investments that they're held at the 30th of September. And you'll see there that the total is just under £32 million, and that provides you a breakdown of all those investments that the Council holds. For comparison purposes, position at Q1 was that the Council held £29.5 million worth of investments. The Council also has purchased property fund units, as had previously been reported, and the table at page 32 is the information that doesn't change. That is the purchase cost of those property fund investments, which total just over £17.3 million. The landscape table on page 33 provides information in relation to those investments. So you'll see there the first column shows the purchase cost of £17.3 million. And then you'll see there's a column there that shows the net asset value as at the 30th of September of all those property fund investments, which currently stand at just over £15 million. So an overall reduction of just under £2.3 million since purchase. And in the current year, the position at the 30th of September, compared with the start of the financial year, is that the Council, those funds have received a gain overall of just under £31,000. That compares with a Q1 position whereby the fund increased by just under £69,000. The table on the top of page 34 provides details of the distributions that the Council has received in relation to those property fund investments. Prior to the current financial year, 2024-25, you'll see that the Council has received revenue distributions of just over £4 million. And in the current financial year, they've received distributions of just over £300,000. And taking into account a small adjustment for the accrual of last financial year's amounts that hadn't been received at the year end, the overall net distributions that the Council has now received since purchase is £4,353,026. By way of overall performance in relation to the Council's budget, the table on page 35, you'll see there a split between Treasury investments, property fund investments, and taking into account borrowing costs, brokers' fees, etc. If you look at the total net income line, budget for period 2, we have for 2024-25, we had a net income budget of £795,000, which is a return of 4.53%. And the actual outturn was £1,114,000, which was a 4.72% return. So an overall favourable variance of just under £319,000. By way of an annual budget, the net position for the annual budget was just under £1.6 million. The forecast outturn is £1,945,000. So based on the position at the 30th of September, we forecast a favourable variance of around £359,000. Interest rates in the market have been getting higher during the budgeted return, higher than the budgeted return for the current financial year. And the levels of interest received have been higher due to the higher levels of investment balances that the council has due to slippage in the council's capital programme, and the fact that the interest rate reductions haven't fed through at the rate that the external Treasury advisors originally forecast. You have at Appendix A1 the capital programme, a detailed split of that capital programme, and some additional information as to the split between each project, the actual expenditure on each project, and the forecast outturn on those projects. That concludes the report. The recommendation is that the Audit and Governance Committee note the report, the Treasury activity in Appendix A, and make any comments to Council when they consider the report at the meeting on the 20th of January 2025. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sean. A very well detailed and concise and precise report, as usual. Now we're going to throw the floor open for questions. I've got Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few weeks ago, our MP, Richard Tice, made the suggestion that we should sell our property funds and reinvest. I didn't agree with his argument, but have I missed something here? Any comments on it?
Let's ask Sean. What's your view, Sean, please?
The position in relation to the council's property funds is we keep them under regular review. I'm aware of the letter, the MP's letter that was received, and I drafted a response to the council's Section 151 officer, because obviously the Section 151 officer is responsible for all the investments held by the council and the committed. There have been some changes to capital regulations and minimum revenue provision statutory guidance, which we have to take into consideration. So as part of the next review of the council's property fund investments, we will be bringing an informed information pack to members to show what the implications of those legislation changes are, and it will also show what the performance of the property funds have been historically, because as you all are aware, during COVID, base rates were down at 0.1%, and the council was receiving very small amounts of interest, and the property funds were a good boost to those council revenue account, because we were still receiving large returns in comparison with that. But we will be bringing a separate report to the Audit and Governance Committee and Council in relation to property fund investments as part of the normal review that we would undertake.
Well, pretty well. I'll look forward to the further comment.
Yeah, I mean, Sean does monitor the Treasury situation ongoing, don't you, Sean, on a regular basis, and you're making sure that constantly watching the situation. So you are doing that anyway, aren't you, on behalf of the council?
Yes, regular reports are produced, and for example, you will always receive your quarterly Treasury reports here. The Section 151 officer approves these reports and sees the contents of these reports. But in relation to you'll see there, obviously with property funds, you have the revenue return, which is the distributions you receive on a quarterly basis and in some cases a monthly basis. But you also have the capital appreciation or reduction depending on market circumstances at the time. So we do keep that under review. They are a long-term investment, and the whole cycle in relation to property fund investments is you can see some big changes up and down. I've seen large changes down, I've seen large changes up, but when the decision was made, it was flagged up. They are a long-term investment.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Middleton.
Interesting, Councillor Austin there. Is Richard Tice qualified to advise us of this, and is he prepared to underwrite any losses that he causes us if we were to follow his advice?
I think I hear what you say, Councillor Middleton, and I understand where you're coming from. Every council has different situations in their finances. So, we are working on the inside, an MP is working on the outside, does not necessarily know where we stand financially. But I appreciate what Councillor Austin said, and I certainly appreciate what you said, Councillor Middleton. I think we'll leave it at there. Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was, when we the proposal put forward to invest the money into the property funds, I was dubious, because at the time my feeling was the government was moving the risk from them to us. However, I think we've done all right with it so far. It was always explained to us as being a very long-term investment, because of the good work of our officers by paying off that initial Public Lending Works Board loan at a considerable discount. Yeah, we are actually getting a good return on our actual money we have invested in them. So because we ended up getting our £70 million worth of property, and we paid less than £10 million to get rid of the loan. So whilst that is the value of the things, and they're not performing that great, the actual amount of money we've spent, we're getting a very good return. And I think it would be, I think we'd have to look very carefully about moving out of that.
I tend to agree with you there. And I think from sitting on this committee the last 18 months, I think we've been very happy and satisfied the way that the Treasury and the finances of the council have been run. So I tend to agree with you there. Can we move on to Councillor Cantwell? Oh, sorry. Just let me go to Cantwell first, and I'll come back to you in a second. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I was hoping I could just get a small amount of commentary on the changes to the approved budget on page 37, Appendix A1, for the Town Centre Heritage Scheme and the revenues and benefits. It would just be good to know why those changes have occurred.
Unfortunately, I don't have any detailed information in relation to the capital programme, because the Audit and Governance Committee doesn't scrutinise capital expenditure. It's the scrutiny of capital expenditure and approvals and recommendations in relation to capital expenditure, I believe, goes to Cabinet and then Council. But in the past, when these documents have been produced and they see there's been no information in relation to capital expenditure, I've been requested to just provide some information in relation to the overall capital position. But if you want to know the details behind the capital programme itself, I would suggest you go to the minutes of the Cabinet meetings to try and establish the detailed background behind that, because I don't deal with capital expenditure myself.
Are you happy with that comment? Reply?
Yeah.
Right, so Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I just wondered if you could help us on the Lobo loan. I appreciate those can be very onerous and difficult to get out of and expensive, but presumably we've kept that under review, and are there any possibilities for exiting that you're aware of?
Yes, when we redeemed the Public Works Loan Board loans in October last financial year, we did also look at the position in relation to the Lobo loan as well. But the premium at that time was around, from memory, was around £900,000, in addition to the £1 million that you'd have to redeem. So at the time when we crunched the numbers, taking into account what we could effectively, how we could actually change the makeup of that loan by borrowing it elsewhere at a cheaper rate, the overall cost didn't work. The numbers didn't work out. Interestingly, I have had them contact us again to see if we're still interested. So I'm just waiting for the numbers to come through just to have a look, but we are continually looking at it. And that is because the interest rates in the market at the moment have started to increase again in the long-term period. And if we want to actually redeem a loan at 11.125%, what we need is the interest rates to rise to reduce the premium that we would need to pay on top. So we do keep it under review, but at the moment, the last time we looked at it, it wasn't economical to do so, but we are reviewing. I'm waiting for some numbers to come back, and if anything is viable, then obviously we would report back on that.
Thank you. Councillor Gleeson.
put it rather crudely, nobody in their right mind is going to give up the 11.25% every year till 2050. Yeah, it's a long story as to how we ended up with this loan, but it's there till the end. I mean, no one knows actually. But anyway.
A very long story. Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah, now I'm not sure how relevant this question is because I'm often aware of the fact that at audit and governance, I tend to ask questions which aren't always sort of relevant to the to this particular committee. But just looking through the capital programme, I just wonder whether or not revenue implications have been taken into consideration when we're looking at capital investments and capital investment projects. So, for example, the public realm improvements do appear to contain some element of revenue requirement to maintain them. And I'm just wondering whether that's been considered in relation to this, or it's another committee that looks into that.
Yes, when any item is taken to Cabinet for inclusion in the capital programme, there is a detailed report in respect of those schemes, and those reports should contain revenue implications of their decision.
Are there any more questions before we move on? I'll ask Councillor Woodliff to have a few words. Come on, sir. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a State Street loan. I thought it was 50 years from 1991, which would make it 2041, wouldn't it, rather than 2051? You have to check that, but I thought it was a 50-year loan from 1991. Am I wrong on that? Which would make it 2041, wouldn't it? So 2041 then would be the date, not 2051, wouldn't it be?
I will check that and report back to you.
Thank you very much, yes.
Thank you for raising the question, Councillor Woodliff.
It is 41 and it's £110,000 a year.
We will we'll get Sean to check that out and just confirm it at the next meeting. But we seem to have a 41 in our mind, not a 51.
It's 50 years, yeah.
Right. Well, any more questions before we move on? Oh, sorry, Councillor Dunning.
Mr. Chairman, I have two questions. The first one is looking at the situation or the economic situation now in the world by getting Keir Starmer in the position of Prime Minister and having Donald Trump, or as the President of America. Can you tell us if there will be any risks in the future for our investments? That's one thing. And the second thing is on page, I think, 25, I heard you talked about internal borrowing. Can you just give us an insight of internal borrowing, if it's coming from our reserves or coming from somewhere else? Thank you, Sean.
Yes, in relation to the economic situation, world situation, changes in presidency in the United States and the war in the Ukraine, etc. What we do is we always assess global risks when making investment decisions. The council's counterparty looks at the sovereign countries where the council can invest, and you'll be aware that, for example, Finland meets the criteria for investments, but as it borders Russia at the moment, we aren't making any investments in any banks from Finland due to the closeness of that situation. So that's an instance where we take that into account. We don't have any investments with the US banks at the moment, but I'm sure if anything happens from a change in the US presidency that's likely to affect any of the financial institutions, the credit rating agencies will be keeping that under review, and that may then result in changes in credit ratings from Fitch, Moody's, or Standard & Poor's. And then if that happens, our external treasury advisors will be advising us of any changes in the recommended maximum durations for investments with financial institutions from different countries. The position in relation to the question in relation to internal borrowing, what that is, obviously the council incurs capital expenditure, and if that capital expenditure isn't all financed from what's specific earmarked reserves, etc., then that can create a borrowing requirement. And then you have two choices to meet that borrowing requirement. You can either externally borrow, and when we do that, we normally do that from Public Works Loan Board because that's normally the cheapest source, or you can internally borrow. And then what we have been doing over the last few years is we've been doing internal borrowing rather than incur the cost of external borrowing. Internal borrowing is where you use the council's surplus cash balances, which is made up of working capital, which is the difference between your creditors and debtors, etc. All the income that you receive from your council tax business rates payers until such time as it's needed throughout the year to finance your general expenditure in year. And also your reserve balances, your earmarked reserves, that's the reserves that have been specifically earmarked for certain types of capital expenditure. But at the moment, until such time as that expenditure is incurred, obviously you've still got the money in the bank to cover that. So what you do is you use the reserve balances to finance, well, not specifically finance, you use your reserve balances that are in your council's cash coffers to effectively cover that expenditure until such time as your reserves, your cash balances run out. And then when you get to that situation, that is when you actually do need to actually externally borrow. But there's no benefit in actually externally borrowing and incurring an external interest cost when you can utilise the council's own cash balances and forego some investment interest, which is likely to be lower than you can borrow.
If I might be cheeky, is the internal borrowing free of interest?
Effectively, it isn't free because what happens is you forego interest that you earn, because if you're using it to cover capital expenditure, you're not going to get your interest from investing it. So it's not free.
Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah, I mean, this is I guess the good news story in all this is that we're an investing rather than a borrowing council, which is excellent. In relation to the property funds, there's already been 2 questions about those. I just wonder, are they broken down? Is the spread of risk included in the prospectus for those investments so that we're aware of how much investment is going into commercial and how much into residential, for example, and then the various different types of commercial property that can be invested in?
Yes, when the council originally made the decision to invest in property funds, they invited various fund managers to a meeting with the designated officers that were reviewing it, and part of that process, they stated what their strategy was, where they made their investments, commercial investments, etc., residential investments. You have, after this meeting, one of the fund managers doing a presentation, and you'll see the types of investments that they make. But yes, that was considered when the original decision was made as to which property fund managers that you wish to place the funds with.
Okay, any more questions before we move on? No more questions. Can I ask you to put your microphone off, Sean? Thank you. Right, so the committee is asked to note and comment on the report. Is everybody happy that it's noted now? We've gone through all the questions and we're happy with what Sean said. And the comments have been recorded by the officers. So, Sean, as usual, thank you very much for your report. And now we go on to item 2, information governance and annual update. That's on page 39. And I'll ask Richard Steele to present his report. Richard, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. This report provides an annual update on the compliance with information regulations, part of the Information Governance Service at Boston Council. The report covers a time period October 2003 until September 2024 and starts on page 39 of your packs. The highlights from the report relate to the ongoing use of environmental information regulations and the Freedom of Information Act by the general public to understand and engage with the local authority. During the analysis of requests this year, there is a continued increased use of information regulations by social action groups such as the Dogs Trust, Migration Watch or Nature Watch, and media organisations to obtain information from the council. In paragraph 2.1.4 on page 40, we can see that 253 requests were made to Boston Borough Council, which is a slight increase on last year. Of these, 47 were for information relating to the environment or environmental matters such as biodiversity, planning and flooding, amongst other things. The council only applied exemptions to disclosure where necessary, and in most cases after something called a public interest test. Only 99 requests of the 218, I think, Thank you. Okay. The team handled exemptions and provided advice on 276 occasions, which demonstrates proactive engagement with the requesters. When the figures in table 2.1.4, which on top of page 41, are aggregated, the percentage of responses within statutory deadlines was 98%. This is above the ICO good threshold, which is 95% on time. In respect to data protection, we have an ongoing process where the use of data, changes to processes, and trace processes are assessed for compliance with the data protection legislation. It's called a DPIA. As indicated in 2.2.5 on page 42, there have been 48 data incidents reported. This is a very low volume given the number of transactions the council processes. The council is committed to maintaining high standards of information governance, ensuring compliance with statutory obligations and fostering transparency and accountability. Annual reporting will align with the financial year going forward to enhance performance tracking and reporting continuity. The recommendation is that the committee notes the report. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any questions? Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chair. Relating to the 48 data incidents that have been reported, could you possibly give us an example of what those incidents are? Obviously, I always look for sort of weak signals when anything comes to data security or anything like that, and that's sort of just under one a week. I'm just trying to get my head around what sort of incidents they are.
So a couple of examples would be a letter sent from council tax to an incorrect party, whereby through investigation we identified that they actually told us the wrong address. It's still a data incident, but given the number of transactions that they encounter, that's a very small amount. Another may well be where one member of staff has emailed an incorrect other member of staff and that email contained personal data. Again, that is also recorded as a data incident, although the risk to the organisation is pretty light.
Thank you very much.
Any further question on that one?
No, it's just to sort of summarise. Obviously, that our data recording is a lot more stringent than other organisations from the look of it. If we're sort of recording data from email to email internally, normally that wouldn't constitute a data issue in most companies. It would be you've sent it to the wrong person, whereas if we're recording that could lead to the amount of incidents that have been there. But no, I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you, Chair. Turning to the freedom of information request, one of the disadvantages of just recording the incidents is it doesn't reflect really how much work is involved. One incident can be a relatively simple thing, and another could be lots of hours of work. I know there becomes a stage where we can say, go away, it's too much work. But obviously up to that stage, do we record how many work hours are involved in it? Because again, that could explain, like why in some months we're not quite meeting the targets and stuff, because, if it appears we've got fewer requests and yet we're not meeting a target, but it could be those requests actually required an awful lot of work. And so I do think we'd have a better overview if we did have some idea of how many hours work that is. Now, what I don't want to do, I accept having asking for this, is to add hours work. So I don't want, the keeping of how many hours work we're doing takes more hours work than the hours work we're doing and stuff. So, but if there is any way of just giving us some ballpark figures in a given year, a given month, that this was, 27 days work or whatever. I just think it would give us a better understanding of how it's impacting on us. And again, how much that is costing us as well would be of interest. I mean, in my previous life, had quite a lot of run-ins with the local government ombudsman. And that could cost you a fortune as a council. Yeah, I mean, one lot was half a million. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But so I think it would be interesting to know how many man hours, how many person hours, and how much this is actually costing us as an organisation.
I'll let Richard respond to that, Councillor Gleeson.
I think the honest answer is that we don't currently track the number of hours spent per FOI. Other than those that spend that cost more than the £450 limit, where we can provide an exemption. But we do I'll probably take away and probably discuss that with John, for instance, and determine if there is a way that we can do that, if that's possible.
I think Councillor Gleeson's got a valid point. It would be interesting to know just how many hours goes into each request, and also, is it hours and hours and hours on some of these things that really are costing us a fortune in time and labour? Councillor Gleeson, back to you.
Even if, Chair, it's just maybe we do 1 month of it, rather than put an awful lot of work onto the department. But maybe if we can take a random month and try and keep slightly more details of the time spent and things, and that would just then give us some sort of benchmark.
I tend to agree with you there, and I say we don't want to burden Richard and his team with all the extra recording and logging, but I think a sample month wouldn't go amiss. Then the actual committee could have a better understanding of exactly what goes into all this, because we're sitting here listening to all the things that you're doing, and we've got no idea really how much time it's taken to do it. But anyway, can I leave that with you, Richard? Is that okay? We'll move on to Councillor Cantwell.
Thank you, Chair. Two quick questions from me. We've mentioned that which page was it? That we've met the ICO good target of 95%, with the overall average across the year being 99%. I was just wondering, when we collect the data to see how we've dealt and coped with these, do we, at the end of an FOI request or an SAR request when we get them, do we send the requestee almost like a survey saying how they felt their request has been handled, whether they thought the council was helpful, stuff like that, so we can kind of gauge, although we're meeting the ICO's requirements, are our residents feeling the process is open and engaging with them as well?
Richard.
So the answer to that is currently we don't do surveys after we send the responses. To add some context, quite a large proportion of our requesters are not locals. They are organisations like the BBC, like the Telegraph. There's an organisation called What Do They Know, which anonymises FOI requests to some degree. So the value for those sort of surveys may not be the value there. However, there are a proportion that are locals, and I'll take your point.
Happy?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah, just intrigued by the fact that my understanding of the Freedom of Information Act was for organisations and individuals to get background information relating to policy decisions, information that wasn't generally considered to be in the public domain, and that ties in with what you said about the BBC and the Telegraph and others. But there's reference in here to 28 requests were redacted. Well, redacting is quite a time-consuming activity for law enforcement reasons. Would that information that's been provided for law enforcement reasons actually fall under the heading of freedom of information request, or would that be something which is sort of judicial, quasi-judicial, or in relation to civil enforcement or something?
It probably wasn't clear in the report. The redaction on the basis of law enforcement is because by releasing the information, it would prejudice a law enforcement activity the authority has. So it could be a background, someone's making a request for a background report to an ongoing planning matter or an ongoing enforcement matter elsewhere in the organisation. The Freedom of Information Act is for any recorded information that the council holds, no matter what, and it's as open as that.
Thank you. Go on to Councillor Gleeson.
Quickly, following on from Councillor Campbell, it might be an interesting thing just to have that breakdown of how many requests are national and local requests.
Is that possible at all?
Yes, I can do that. That's not a problem.
Thank you very much. Going to Gideon now. Over to you.
Thank you. I just really wanted to make the point that to have figures of 100% going down only as low as 96% seems to be extremely good. And I think I would suggest that your staff members should be congratulated on that if they're doing such good work.
Yes, I think we'll take that as granted, and well done. Yeah, thank you very much, Gideon. Adam.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really excellent performance. And I just wanted to ask Richard, just in the point of the 6 that we didn't quite respond to in time, were there any common factors in those? I mean, it probably goes back to Councillor Gleeson's question. Were they particularly onerous questions? Did they take longer because of the question being asked?
The specifics of the 6, I can't tell you exactly now why they were late. Invariably, they are potentially late because although my team collate the FOI and they do the redaction and they do the application of law, we're very much reliant on every other team in the organisation to provide us the information that they hold. And just finding the information sometimes is an onerous task. So it's a big team effort from the whole organisation rather than just the FOI officers.
Yeah, I do understand where you're coming from. I've some history myself in dealing with FOIs. Thank you, Richard.
Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chair. Just put me to the post on the late responses. Just to add on that, is there any way we could probably just record the late responses, just so we've got sort of an understanding of what the late responses are? If there's any trends, if there's one department that's a little bit not a hindrance, but where there's a lot of redactation that needs doing from one department. It's just so obviously it can be advised to the committee, I guess, so we know what they are.
Certainly possible to give you a breakdown of what those were.
Are there any more questions? Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be straightforward. Is there any breach of data protection where information passed to a third party? And how many were they, probably, if you can?
There was some breaches which resulted in a third party having access to information that they shouldn't have done. I would have to get the numbers for you.
And how did the council dealt with it?
In most cases, the council will have asked for the information to be returned or destroyed and confirmation of that. And then a risk assessment will be undertaken to see whether that person who was a data owner needed to be informed and whether the ICO needed to be informed. Just on the back of that, there have been no notifications to the ICO this year.
Are there any more questions? Right, Richard, on behalf of the committee then, would you like to take back a thank you and well done to the team for all the hard work they've done? And, as what Gideon said, it's obviously very pleasing to hear that you've worked very hard and you've done a really good job there. So please take that back on behalf of the committee. Right, the committee is asked to note the comments and the report. Is everybody happy to take his note because we've recorded all the details from the officers? Yes, all in favour? Good, so all noted. Thank you very much. Agreed. Right, get my work programme, item 3. The final agenda item this evening is the work programme, which starts on page 47 of the agenda pack. The committee is asked to note and comment on this. Is everyone happy to take that as noted, or do you want to make any comments? If anybody like to say anything at all? Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you, Chair. At various meetings I've been at recently, the issue of the various capital programs that we've got running come up, and there seems to because I think these programs were decided by the previous council, I think there's still a lack of understanding of where the control of this money is, what monies we've got, what monies we haven't got, what commitments we're making, how they're being monitored, who's monitoring them. I'm just wondering whether it might be useful for us to have a relatively straightforward report with just the background to each project, who's controlling the money, how it's being monitored, and so on, just so that it can put to bed, I think, in truth, a lot of the misunderstandings that are going on.
Yes, I agree entirely with you, because I mean, we're always sitting here looking at numbers and wondering where things are going and coming and like, sure, have you got anything to say on that at all?
I would have to refer that request to Christine Marshall, the council section 151 officer, to see if it is the jurisdiction is not the right word, but is it the responsibility of the Audit and Governance Committee to be scrutinising capital expenditure? So it's really where the, I don't know whether John can provide any assistance on that as monitoring officer.
I don't think we're asking for scrutiny. I think we're asking for just for some information on how it's been monitored and processed. That's all, I think, really. John, do you want to speak at all on that one? Patrick Leeson.
Yeah, can I just, whilst you're asking whether it's responsibility of A&G, could you answer if it's responsibility of C&C? Yeah.
Can you ask Christine? She's not unfortunately able to be here this evening. She can send her apologies. Could you ask Christine to sort of just clarify for us where this all sits? Because I think we've got people asking questions that nobody seems to have any answers to, and I think it needs clarifying. John.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think, you know, just putting it into the context, the scrutiny of how the projects are being delivered or performed would sit in the scrutiny domain. But if you're looking at governance control mechanisms in place, then that's something that could come to this committee to be reviewed. So it's just making clear what the different roles of the various committees are within the authority. Thank you.
Councillor Gleeson.
The Institute of Public Scrutiny have actually issued some quite interesting papers on joint scrutiny of audit and governance and a scrutiny committee, which is something we might want to look at.
I tend to agree with you there, because we have got 3 scrutiny committees as such as this one, and then the other 2 corporate and community and environment and performance, and so that's something we could talk about and raise at the meeting on Wednesday. Councillor Gilbert.
Yeah, I just want to echo what's already been said, really, and say that I think that we do have a number of these capital funds available to us now. It's come down under the levelling up and long-term fund for towns, and it would be useful to know what the decision-making process is behind some of the decisions that will be made in the future about that, where that money should be spent.
Councillor Gleeson.
Don't get me wrong, I accept that these decisions have been made. What I'm not trying to do is reopen the decisions. What I'm trying to achieve is that we have understanding of where the monies are, how the money's, who is spending the money, not what we're spending on, because that's been decided. I accept all that. It's just, I'm just worried that we see all these big figures going around, and I can't say I'm dead certain who is controlling all of it. I'm happy it's nothing's going wrong, but we've got the town board who are we're doing some things, and then we're responsible. And I just want nice and easy this project, this money, a simple flow chart, of who's spending it, who's checking on it, and stuff like that.
You're the chairman of C&C. Are you getting information like that? Because we're not getting it here.
Well, I'm not at the moment. Then I'm not asked for. I'm only just asking for it. So.
Okay. Well, I think Sean's got the picture, and so has John.
Can I just comment? Is here we are talking about doing a lot more work for something doesn't appear to be a problem. Are we looking to pile work onto different officers, this, that, the other, when there's no problem? If there was a massive problem and we saw in data that we were down at 85% on something, let's investigate it. But why are we asking officers to do hours of work when there isn't a problem?
I hear what you're saying. Councillor Gleeson.
a council invested in solar farms. And they thought that was all right. They are now a bankrupt council. We just still have a duty just to make sure that we are confident that the measures are in place. I'm not asking to, I'm not asking to, rehearse why we're doing these things. All I want is just a nice straightforward report telling me who is making the decisions in some of these cases and how they are being checked on, so that I feel confident that we're all right.
Sorry, I hear what you say, Councillor Cantwell.
Just to kind of sum up, Chair, from my perspective, is if it's a strategic risk to this council, then it should be at least looked at or discussed in some way. Perhaps we could have a conversation at some other time regarding this, and then we can have a much more thorough chat about what is a strategic risk and what we should be looking at.
Well, we've through Sean and through John, we're going to ask Christine to give us a little overview of basically what we're asking for, just to give us an idea. I don't think we need to go into great detail and discussion. I think we've got the picture now, so we're going to move on. Anybody else want any more questions?
But to address the fact that the long-term fund for towns is now available to us, and I don't think it actually has been committed as such. And so it may be an opportunity for us to have some kind of oversight into how that money is spent over the next 10 years. Okay,
right. Any more questions? Good. So thank you. That concludes this evening's business. I'll close the meeting. Thank you for your attendance. I'm going to give you a 5-minute break to go to the toilet and get a drink, and then I'm going to invite our two guests to come and speak to us. Before we close the meeting, Sean, go on then. So it is 2051, so we've got that one sorted. Thank you very much for that. I'm now going to close the meeting. 5-minute break, back in 7:35, and then we're going to have a presentation from these two fund managers. Thank you.